Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Nikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
Welcome back to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. I'm not on the intro, but maybe one day. Who knows?
No, we're not really recording that. It's hard enough.
We have a guest with us today, the man himself, Jamie Smith.
From
we don't
Melbourne
have any
Strength Culture.
Yeah, Melbourne Strength Culture. We don't have any
I could reach out and press the applaud
to
button,
applaud or something, but crowd noise, insert Tam.
We're here to talk about, in general, in a broad sense, just fitness industry education. Something that, man, so controversial. As in, well, I saw it controversial because in most industries, it's very formalized and it's very set in stone and you have to do this and you have to do that. Whereas in the fitness industry, you've got people who are successful because they ran through uni and they've got a PhD. And then you've got people that are successful because they know how to shit talk on Instagram. Yeah. And you've got people who fucking have genetic abs and then don't have a fucking clue what they're on about that are successful. So like literally the door is open as to like what you need to be successful in the industry. There's no standard, which makes it a very interesting place to operate.
Well, even the Cert 3-4 as a specific PT.
So I am.
Yeah, like that's literally the most low entry, no pre-qualification thing you can get. Yeah, there's nothing. It's quite literally nothing. Anyone can sign up at any point, pay you 6 to 10 grand or whatever it is, and
over the past couple of years, or more than a couple of years, both Nexus and Strength Culture and your own personal brand have delved just down different rabbit holes of education, both to educate ourselves and to educate others within the industry. And yeah, that's why we're on here today, and I thought you would be the man to discuss this with. You probably don't feel qualified.
I don't feel qualified. I'm just in the Wild West part. I just sort of do whatever the hell I want.
We all though.
Yeah, exactly.
Who has got it sorted out? Mike is retired. I don't know. It's like,
yeah, it is odd. Like it is an odd. Like I feel like the only negative to it though is that if you're trying to find like a specific pathway, there's just not. Like there's so many different ways that you can find success or find education or find mentors or find courses and all of that sort of stuff. Like the opportunities are all there. Yeah, the only negative is for the people who are like, well, what's the set direction that I need to move? And the classic one is I get so many young coaches be like, oh, should I go to uni? Like, do I need to go to uni? And like without just being like, fuck, no chance, man. Fuck uni. Like, obviously, like you got to make sure that it's, but yeah, like I just don't think that any of those, I just don't think that any of those formal type things, I don't know, like I'm sure you guys could speak to it, but like all my best education personally has come from actually just like an internship when I went to Cressy. Like, yeah, I would do that 10 times over rather than go back to uni and do something.
Just being around people who are fucking great at their craft.
100%.
Yeah.
I think if I saved the 3 years and 35K, I'd be fucking way better off if I'd invested into finding better people in the industry, because uni taught me nothing except how to read a journal article and how to reference properly, even though I got done for plagiarism at one point, but whatever.
ChatGPT wasn't around at that point.
35. No, it wasn't. It came in after I finished. I was like, you fucking dogs.
Apparently ChatGPT, they've now got software that can see if ChatGPT has written the thing.
Yeah,
there's like an anti-Chat GPT.
Yeah, so turn it in, the actual software that every university, I'm pretty sure it's worldwide now, uses. It can essentially summarize whether it references it as ChatGPT or not.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Even though if you type in a ChatGPT, you can be like, make this non-plagiarized, so like they haven't given it to someone else. That's like it can still detect it or something. It's the language in which it uses or whatever
I'm sure
it
there's
is.
Some code embedded
I'm
in there.
sure there's something in it, but yeah, it's fucking crazy.
But it's funny. I was like, you're trying to use ChatGPT to outsmart ChatGPT. Like, no.
No, all I had was Grammarly. My university got so sick of people having spelling and grammar issues that they just paid for Grammarly for everyone. But it also meant you could not have a single grammar or spelling issue within your thing. Otherwise, you get 0 marks.
See,
which makes sense, I guess. Like if they're paying for it,
I guess so. Fair enough. But in the fitness industry, it's almost the opposite. In that it's like, I don't know, if I see a post, at least these days with ChatGPT and these AI stuff being around, if I see a post that's like overly formal and like clearly like not authentic to the person who's writing it, and not the way that they speak, not the way that they think, it's kind of like like I'm not even going to bother with this, even if it's great information. It's kind of like, it's just kind of like boring. It's not real. So like, I guess, I was trying to say, like, it won't really help you long term anyway. No, it'll help you to pass that exam.
Super funny. I was having this chat with Georgina. Like so you don't know this, Jamie, but my missus is newer PT to the industry, only like under the couple year belt, and she's very much in that like first starting bit of like putting more content out there, but a little bit worried about the way in which she writes. So she's been putting everything through ChatGPT.
We're all there.
And she sent it to me the other day, and I was just like, nah, you can't post this. This is the most formal fucking thing. No one's going to relate to it. It doesn't.
Is good.
Yeah, like, no, it broke it down like so well written. And I was like, you don't talk like this. I was like, just write how you talk.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like restructured it a little bit for her, sent it through to her, and she's like, fuck, that's just so much better. I was like, I literally just typed how I would talk.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what your audience are going to want.
How do you find writing, like when you're educating people in the space, especially like whether it's an online course, an in-person, or whether it's an internship in your gym, how do you deliver, like take this information and then like formal, like turn it into a course or teach people? Like how do you explain it? How formal do you want to keep it?
Well, I think before you even get to that, like the whole conversation about sort of what you were just describing there with like, I put under like brand voice from like a business perspective or like a marketing sort of arm of marketing is like your branding and how you communicate, how you message, how you converse with the people consuming your content. Like I think that's really, really important. And like you only have to look out, even just staying in the fitness industry, like you even just have to go to like who I think are the most successful people, irrespective of whether it's gym ownership or they're online or they do transformations or they do S&C, like irrespective of all that, like the whole umbrella of health and fitness. Like a couple of names that pop into my head, James Smith PT, like the brand voice of what James Smith PT, and it's always been so consistent. Like the swearing is the obvious one, but the way in which he like actually communicates his ideas, and he's talking about a calorie deficit, but he's doing it in a creative way. Another one would be like a Eugene Teo, and like the creative ways in which he can formulate his idea, and it's more enticing, hence why he's got more followers and more of those sort of people, or just like a bigger brand in general. Is because his brand voice is so strong through all of his content. It's so consistent, and you know exactly what you're getting when you click on a Eugene Teo video, or you know exactly what you're getting when you consume his reel or his social posts, or you're on his emails or anything like that. A David Gray would be the same. Like all of these like super, and it's something that we've really been trying to improve at, just from a branding perspective, I guess, is trying to like fine tune the way in which we communicate our ideas. And I think we've had patches where we've done really well, and then other patches where we've just sort of confused people. And at a personal level, this is me just removing myself from the Strength Culture brand. I've gone through cycles of struggling with my own way in which to communicate. And do I want to be formal, or do I really like this kickback approach, or do I want to be highly technical, or do I want to go a little bit more general? Like all of those conversations and decisions can be challenging. And if you're a young coach, like your partner, like if you're a young coach who's just stepping in and you've got these huge fucking fish out there that just dominate socials, and you need to sound, or you feel you need to sound smarter than maybe you feel that you are, or the knowledge that you may not have acquired yet, or any of that sort of stuff. And all of that, I think it just kills the enjoyment of just being yourself and throwing yourself out there and communicating your ideas and your story and your journey. And like, I think that's the crux of, I think that's where it all sort of needs to come back to in order to find success in whatever realm. That was a bit of a ramble, but something that like right. Marketing, like, I don't know, like
nailed it.
Yeah. Like not even like, I know we're going to talk about education and stuff, but like at a personal level, like I've given myself like a really, like I've almost like, my job with my business now is like marketing and sales. Like that is just my role now. Like that's ultimately what my value is to this business. I don't coach anymore. I do some gym floor shifts and a couple of one-on-ones, but like fundamentally, like my value in this business is no longer coaching. Like I need to actually upskill myself and develop myself in these areas. And it's been challenging, but I'm really, I don't know. Like I enjoy that process of like, why are these people so fucking good at what they're doing? Like, and whether in the education space or whether or not they're just PTs or coaches or S&C or rehab or whatever, like trying to observe these people and try to learn from them, I guess. Yeah.
Well, what would be your advice to somebody like Georgina who's just starting with content, starting to get into content? Like, how do you, in your opinion anyway, like develop your voice? You know how you said before, like you want to, do you want to be technical, or do you think starting with an end goal and going like, I want to be like Mike Israetel or Jordan Shallow and speak like that, and then kind of like fake it till you make it? Or do you think just be yourself straight up? Or I don't know, like where do you land on that?
I think for any new coach who's just starting out, let's say first 2 to 3 years, maybe you're working a couple of jobs, doing some shifts over here, taking some PT over there, maybe you got some online clients or whatever, like you haven't really like set structured. And some people might be 8 years into the industry and working through that process as well. But if you want to step into like the online content world, not to say that we have done this successfully, we do it, but nowhere near the level of those previous names that I spoke to. But I think like those initial, let's just give it your first 6 months of being online. Like I think the most important thing is to share your own journey more than anything else, and what you've learned, what you've struggled with, what you found to help you, or what you found to help your clients. Thankfully, I think we're out of this fucking evidence-based era that crushed creativity on social media the last, let's go from 2016 to probably middle of COVID. That like 6-7 year period where everyone was asking for fucking research and where's the PMID of that, like that I think is gone. Like I really just do. It's still weighted, obviously. There's still importance to that sort of stuff. But I think the general social trends of Instagram specifically is just tell your story, be yourself, share your own processes. Even if there's not hard and fast evidence, don't say anything that's going to be like stupid to be like, this is the only way and all of that. Like just sort of like treat it as a normal conversation, like you said, Josh, I guess. But
I think that's a good thing you sort of mentioned at the end there, is like, don't talk in absolutes. I think that was one thing that, like, especially when I was sort of coming through uni and sort of trying to establish myself a little bit more as a coach instead of just a PT, and like almost like elevate myself a little bit. I got caught up in like, I have to reference PubMed. I have to reference I have to speak,
especially coming from
eloquently.
uni.
I have to speak in this language that like, this is what people want. And then it was just so anti me, like even in presentations and stuff at uni, I'd swear and things like that in the middle of it. And the lecturers loved it. They were just like, this is what we want to see. Like you care, or this is what it is. And I was like,
you're thinking,
fuck it. Like, this is how I am. This is what I do. And the more I've pushed into that and like talk or swear or whatever the case might be, that's just authentically me. Like that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And trying to avoid speaking in absolutes for the most part, but still, like, it can be hard to not get caught up in that sometimes, especially when you're a younger PT or a coach or anything really.
I think there's still got to be some method behind the madness with this. Like I've filmed, like Nexus is collaborative with Gambaru, and I filmed a lot of content with Eugene. And he's a master of the content. He knows all the strings and how it all works a lot better than I'll ever know. But there's like I love it when I go and film with him, because there's two sides to it. There's like this, there's the very creative, just speak and just see where it goes and just explore and do all the things that we're talking about. But then on the other hand, there's still a vast knowledge of like, we're going to have this title and it's going to be a little bit vague, and then there's going to be this thumbnail and it's going to be like the right angle or some shit to just get people. Like you got to get people in the door, right? I think you actually put up a thing for the gym recently, for Strength Culture, that is about you're going to do like a challenge of some sort.
We're calling it a challenge, but it's not a challenge.
But then, 10 years ago, I know myself and probably yourself would have been like, oh man, challenge, come on, like they don't fucking work, fuck that shit. But then I view it very differently now, being much more mature and being in the industry much longer, and being like, this is just a gateway for people to get in just literally step foot in the fucking place or step foot into what we do, and then we're going to blow their minds and show them what really, what we're really about after that and what they really need, and give them like so much value. They just need to like break out of that cycle of F45s and good lives and stuff like that, and come and visit us. So all I'm saying is that there's a creative, there's just you, but then there's still some like planning, there's some method where with these bigger guys, there's a good
there's a process
position,
there's a formal process in place. Like I don't know, like I feel like and part of this whole thing for myself has been like this shift in my own identity, like stepping away from coaching and taking more of like that marketing sales sort of position, or not taking the position, but like the attitude shift for myself to be like, no, this is what I do. Like, this is my actual role. And I think, my journey through the industry has, especially the last couple of years, has just felt like a little bit like, what am I fucking doing? Like, where am I going? What is my business doing? Like, are we on the right path? Is this something that we actually want to do long term? Like, it's no secret that we've heavily moved away from just like purely lifting based content and powerlifting and heavy biomechanical stuff. Like, anyone that you would have followed us or myself from 7-8 years ago, stark contrast in how we're now sort of communicating training ideas and talking about things and all of that sort of stuff. But like, I think my evolution, what I'm getting to, my final point here, is that my evolution has kind of challenged my ego on what I would have perceived to be, as you said, Will, like 4 or 5 years ago, like I would be so against framing things as like a short, not a short-term fix, but a shorter period type thing. Like, I've always just been, no, like it's a long-term process. We had a 6-month contract in it for a 12-month period. And because it was like, well, no, if you're not in for the long haul, we don't want you here, and all of that sort of stuff, where I don't know, like in the last couple of years, like I've just realized that we've got such an awesome fucking community. We've got a sick gym. Our coaches are really, really knowledgeable. Like, why are we trying to position ourselves as these like high level people and just go after more of your intermediate based lifters, where in reality, we love helping everyone, especially beginners, and getting people to just feel confident in the gym and confident in their program and confident in the plan. And like, that's ultimately, I don't know, just more fulfilling for us. And then the lifetime intermediate powerlifter that just worries about a 2.5 kilo increase, and if they miss a lift, their whole week's falling apart, and it's like, I don't know, it's just it can become like it's been a big shift. And I think, like, I know you've, like, we've spoken in private, Will, but like last year was challenging, like without a doubt. The last 12 months of business have been challenging, a lot of external factors, a lot of internal factors. But I think that we're actually breaking out of that, and the direction that we want to head, and it just seems so much more open, and we've got more to explore and stuff. And I don't even know what my final point is here, but it's all just like it's just branding and messaging. It's branding and messaging and like actual marketing and like identifying your target market and how you can communicate to them and all of that. Part of that is content, but part of that is
that fun.
And part of that is a huge deep dive into yourself and what you want and what you actually, who you want to help and how you want to help them and all of that sort of stuff. Like, it's not just this front facing, the reel that pops up every 24 hours. It's what's the process that actually derives from that. Quickly,
just on one point before we kind of steer back to education. I don't know what you had to say about.
Yeah, I got a question.
I just had a funny thing on the 6-month kind of, lock-in contract or whatever you want, to try and like seem elite, or try and attract people that are quote unquote serious. The funny thing is with that, I've found during our time, both online and in person in the gym, is that first of all, like, that's going to like just rock some people the wrong way. Like, they're just not going to like it at some point. Like, people that could have got in the gym, maybe they weren't your person to start, but they've loved the people in there. They've loved you guys. They've loved what you're all about. And they form into like, who you want. And then, so you're missing out on those sort of people. But the lock-in contracts I always find are a bit, I just like not needed, because if somebody gets in there, even if they're not locked in, if they love it, like they're going to stay. And the people that you don't want around that just really just don't fit in, like you don't want them locked in, as if you know what I mean. So like they're kind of, it sorts itself out. If you do a really good job, you provide a lot of value and you're really clear on who you want in there and they know it, don't need that lock-in contract a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've kind of, or like I've personally, for pretty much, online coaching will be 12 weeks, but in the gym, like we're just going to have like a 6-week process. And once you're at the end of the 6 weeks, we can discuss longer term stuff if you want. But because absolutely. And you always end up with someone that's in week 2. And I need to remind myself of this, but they're just not in it. They're not the right person.
Yeah. And you don't want to, you don't want them. They don't fit. They're locked into a thing they're not going to like. It's just not working for either party. What did you have?
My question was more or less around what made you like sit and actually think about having to make that shift? Like what took you from coaching's what I want to do, XYZ, to then be like, okay, no, I'm a marketer and sales now.
Business guy.
So I definitely have a tendency, like I have all or nothing. I've actually just been recently diagnosed. I don't want to be one of those people that's like ADHD diagnosis saved my life and all that sort of stuff. But I've just recently been diagnosed with ADHD. And I definitely have like this just all or nothing
in the team.
And I've got it at many layers at a personal level with interests and previous relationships and all of that sort of stuff. But at a career level, I have these very consistent processes that I've just always had, where I set a large goal. I work really hard at it for a couple of years. I eventually get arguably to the goal, achieve the goal, whatever it might be. Like the goal isn't like an objective set thing, but it's just like a good example was I wanted to work in AFL before Strength Culture. When I was at uni, I was like, I want to be an S&C coach at an AFL club. And I just went fucking hellbent on it. And I was just like, I'm just going to do this. And I was learning things. I was getting additional internships. I was trying to meet the right people. I applied for a job at the VFL at Carlton, and I got that. And then they asked me if I wanted to apply. I got the internship at the AFL club, and they asked me if I wanted to apply for the VFL strength coach position. And I got that. And then I was in the system. And I had achieved my goal, but I got there and I was like, this doesn't fulfill me anymore. I'm not interested in it anymore. And then that wave of like, I'm just pulling right back from this. And I ended up getting fired, another story, but it doesn't matter. And then I was like, well, all right, I'm going to work in America then. Fuck Australia and S&C, I'm going to work in America. And I did the same thing, and I Cressy internship, got approved, got some connections, all of that sort of stuff. I got over there, did really well, had a fantastic opportunity at the Cressy internship. And then by the end of it, I was like, actually, you know what? I've seen this Cressy thing. I want to recreate Cressy, what Cressy has in Australia. Get home, set the new goal. I'm going to open a gym, hell-bent on opening the gym. And then all of a sudden that morphed into, we are now powerlifting coaches. We are now a powerlifting gym. And that became the identity of what Strength Culture was for 4 or 5 years. I was a powerlifting coach. I would say that my final client that I took at the point when I realized this is not what I want was actually Will Crozier. When Will reached out, not that I coached Will, but I helped manage his program and into the American thing. And I'd done 3 or 4 years. Yeah, it was mad. It was fucking sick. Like one of the highlights of my career.
Yeah, we traveled around America together.
But after going through that process and doing all of that stuff, and arguably one of Australia's best powerlifters ever, and we broke the all-time national record. For the weight class. What was that? 120, 115s, 120s, 125s. Like we had. Yeah, we had like just an awesome fucking time. But I got to the end of it and I was like, well,
I was in the 125.
That was fun. And then I don't know, I was just like, and then COVID came and that sort of wiped it off. And then I don't know, like ever since that peak of going to America and doing that, I was like, actually, I don't know if this is, and again, it just shifts my goals, shifts my focus, and I go all out on something else. last 2 years it was content, and I was like, I'm just going to make this crazy. And then I realized that wasn't the right thing. And now I'm just sort of like settled into a bit more of a stable thing of like, no, I really just want my physical gym and my coaches to do really well. Like that's really my focus right now. Like I don't really care about world domination and all of that sort of stuff. We just want to continue to build the community that we have and continue to develop the gym and expand the gym and the members and grow all of that sort of stuff and have the coaches feel fulfilled. And I think after going through all those processes of areas that I didn't want to, or I got to and didn't want anymore, I feel like that is just the longest term play, is just full focus on building the gym and all of that. Where do I fit in that? If I don't want to coach, well, I need to do something else and I need to find value in myself elsewhere. And that's where the shift has come. So it hasn't been an easy process. Also spent 9 months with a psychologist discussing these ideas and all of that sort of stuff, who then recommended that potentially see a psychiatrist around these ADHD type things. And since doing that and starting that journey, I'm only fresh into it, but I feel like it's really just going to help to stabilize my process anyway. But yeah, it wasn't so much just like a one-off idea, like fuck this, do this, fuck this. It's just been this ever-evolving process, which may seem erratic from the outside, but for certain areas of that, but from the inside, it's actually like a thought-out process. Yeah, that was a really long answer. Apologies for that.
No, that's sick. No, that answered it perfectly. And we haven't spoken about it much, but I was diagnosed with ADHD last year in June. So like I'm a little bit more into the journey as of the moment. But yeah, it's a very similar thing. Like it just sort of helped to clean up thought processes, strategies, plans of attack, etc. And obviously has now got me to the head coach role and a little bit more involved within the business and that aspect of things. But yeah,
nice.
Definitely understand.
I'm really glad to hear that. Well done.
Yeah, it's fucking sick.
That's really good.
It just helps.
The one part of that journey that you didn't mention, but I know has been a big evolving process in a similar manner, has been your education side, whether that's under strength culture or whether your own training model. And that's gone in lots of different directions as well. Like, do you want to give us a brief rundown of like that history as well, like how that started? Because I mean,
yeah, I'll give you the erratic hot and cold nature of the education side.
Ever since I've known you, like when we went to America together, we went over. People won't know this necessarily, but we went over primarily for education, and then we kind of we slotted in heaps of shit around it and made it a fucking fun trip.
We just tagged an all-time national record on the end.
May as well tick that box. Fuck it.
Chucked it in.
Hefty boy.
Yeah, very pizza life. Domino's.
I still remember when we'd obviously flown over there and we got pinned in those back seats on the plane. And you were peak, like 125 kilos, and you like worded up the fucking stewardess to like just keep giving you sandwiches, and they just kept giving you like an extra sandwich or an extra cookie. I would have like
4 meals.
And you're playing that
per meal.
Yeah, you're playing one of those fucking games that you just, what was it? It was Bill Bartman. What was the fucking it was like some mobile game, and then eventually I got addicted to the mobile game, and we're just sitting everywhere, just like every chance we got. Let's play 10 minutes on this fucking game.
Sounds like Wilbo.
But then anyway, so we're pinned in these fucking seats, and I'm like against, or you were against the window.
No. The problem was there wasn't a window because we're at the very, very back, the only seat in the whole fucking plane that doesn't have a window. I think they did it as a joke because they're like, this guy's not going to fit in a chair. We're not going to give him a window either, so you'll crush the guy next to him. Because usually I would lean into the window a bit and kind of like twist up, but I couldn't even do that. Yeah.
The little portal. And then, so we spent like 20 hours traveling. I get pulled over. Long story. I'm not going to get into it here, but I got arrested in my time in America for a drunken, dumb decision. And I got pulled into customs as soon as we land into LA. I had to sit in customs. We missed our connecting flight. They didn't tell Will where I was. We didn't know what the fuck was going on. I didn't know what was going on. We eventually get through to a new connecting flight. We end up in Boston. And then we're trying to find or did we get to New York?
Chicago on the way through.
New York, Boston, whatever. But I remember we were walking somewhere and you were 125 kilos and you were struggling. And I was like, this is going to be a long trip. Like you didn't want to get Yeah, absolutely. You lost like 15 kilos, man. And then, because you couldn't eat anything. You couldn't do anything. I'm like, this is going to be the longest trip. But then we got to the end and we fucking broke the record anyway. So it doesn't
probably
matter.
the least favorable conditions. Still managed to come through. Probably because I had absolutely zero expectations of it going well. But
that was record breakers?
No stress.
Yes, it was. Stan Efferding, the man. Give me all the white lights for all the high squats.
Hey, all that matters is you got the whites.
Hey, that's not my fault. I just take the judges as they come. Yeah, but give us the So when we were over there, we did education. We did a lot of stuff together in an educational sense. Did a couple of seminars with different people, Paddy D and a couple others. And during that time, I learned a lot about how you think to a degree, and it's always been interesting to me anyway, like how your brain ticks over, whether it is this ADHD or whatever that was ticking over back then and we just didn't know. I don't know, but like your brain, you always had in my opinion, a very unique and different view, and very good at connecting dots in various systems and making it all just like flow together in a honestly an easy to understand way. And I got more out of you a lot of the time explaining it to me secondhand than a lot of the people actually fucking explaining it directly to us. Because I was just not just an athlete, coaching many years at that point, but like just some of the stuff, at least the anatomy that they explained was just a little bit over the top. And I know that you helped a lot with me and my understanding of it at that time. So, and then you came back, and I think that's when you really kind of really pushed into your own education and similar sort of thing to the Cressy story.
Yeah, well, I think I just at that point, I think I had just had more of a foundational, and not from uni or any of that sort of shit, but I had done like PRI, which obviously heavily influenced a lot of especially Zach Couples, and I'd been exposed to Bill Hartman back when I did the Cressy internship and sort of had followed his journey and his evolution of his ideas. Like I think I just had more of a foundational understanding of the concepts that they're trying to. So probably that's where that link was coming from. But the education stuff, so that was a turning point. Again, I get to the end of that trip and I'm thinking maybe I don't want to be a coach anymore, or at least I don't see myself having 40, 50 clients and doing this thing and managing all these people. And if I really want my business to succeed, I probably need to find some other areas that I can sort of increase revenue or change and expand what we offer and all of that sort of stuff. And we would always run internships. The reason being was that my development came from internships. So I just felt like obligated to run internships at the gym. And we've done that all up until last year. I will bring them back at some point this year, just with the baby and stuff. It's just hasn't been able to set a good time frame for it. But so I'd already been doing a little bit of education-based stuff with the internships. And I really enjoyed, I think it's one of the, I personally think it was the most productive thing that I ever did for my own understanding, was formulating all of my ideas, all of my processes, whether or not they're backed by science, it doesn't fucking matter. Just and the way in which I built those internship sessions was I'd ask the group, what do we want to chat about next week? Obviously, we had a little bit of a structure, but with most of my stuff, it's always pretty open that we can sort of explore, and the application stuff is a little bit more open-ended. But and maybe they'd be like, let's talk about the shoulder. So then, all right, next week, over the week, I'd sit down with a blank document and I'd just write the shoulder, and I'd just write random little dot points about the shoulder. And then eventually it would start to formulate, all right, well, we've got to go the anatomy first. Let's unpack the anatomy, bones and muscles, then movements, and then considerations, special considerations, whatever it might be, programming around the shoulder, how that impacts on this, certain goals. And all of a sudden it became this like very like formal idea that I have around what's in my head around that topic. And you could do it with programming, hypertrophy programming. What are all the important things that you think about when someone says my goal is hypertrophy programming? Like, I think it's easily the best thing that I ever did for myself is just formulating my ideas into these little sort of parcels of stuff. And obviously they all sort of connect to each other and all of that sort of stuff. But so I'd already started the process, but I was like, I think, and I'd had really good feedback from the internships, and I'd seen some of the students that come through go on to be successful in physiotherapy, strength and conditioning, or strength training, powerlifting coaching, or whatever it might be. So I knew that the information that I had was productive and popular to a degree. So after going through to America, having some of those internal things of like, do I want to be a coach? Well, maybe not. How can I formulate this process to be actually something that I can sort of call my profession, to be the education stuff? And it is still without a doubt where I get the most, like, everyone feels it at some point in our types of jobs anyway, but you get these like extreme highs, like you come off something. For some people it's powerlifting comps, and when you take clients there and they do really well and you're fucking G'd up and you leave the place and you're just like you're just buzzing. For me, that has always been around education. Like, I love having someone who, and the classic thing that I quite often is like people that are confused. They consume David Gray, they consume Connor Harris, they consume Bill Hartman, they consume Zach Couples. List your endless list of movement and biomechanical sort of people out there, a Cassim Hansen. They consume these people, but they're confused by it. And then they come to something that I do, or one of my courses, or an online thing, and they literally leave it and they're like, everything makes so much more sense now. Like, you've just connected all of these 6 different people into these key principles, and now I can actually see what he's talking about here, or I can see what's going on here, or why they've cued it in this way. Like, that's what G's me up more than anything else, is just helping people understand these. And for me, it's mainly around movement. Like, I just love that shit. I love anatomy and all of that sort of stuff. So the process has just been to formally build in that direction. And I've gone through cycles with it. I did my CDPs, which became like a pseudo fucking uni course, because it was in the hotbed of that evidence-based era. And I was like, everything needs evidence. I need to lay the foundations of how a muscle contracts and what an action potential is and all of this sort of shit. And I did 3 intakes of that. And then I looked back at what I was teaching. I was like, this is not why I started it. Scrap that. Fuck that off. Start again. And I've just gone through the process again. And then ultimately it just became confusing with Melbourne Strength Culture. So I decided to split it off into training model, which is my new thing, which is mainly just my personal brand, I guess, that I can start to build out.
Well, when you finish this,
not that it's ever going to be a full-time thing. Like, I don't want the education stuff to be full-time. My job is to build Melbourne Strength Culture, but it's something that allows me an avenue to continue to scratch that itch of helping young coaches better understand mainly just movement and a little bit of business, because I do like business.
Like, if it was coursey or whatever you want to call it before, where it was very much like strict modules, uni-based sort of, this class and then that class sort of thing, and you didn't like that approach, what is it now? Like, what's the difference now, would you say? Do you think it's more just more principle-based, more just like your experience and big, broad,
Absolutely.
zoomed out pictures as opposed to little details?
Yeah, that's literally it. Yeah, it's the key things, and the way that I built 2 short courses last year, and they're up on my website now, and you can purchase them, and one's for training foundations and one's for business foundations. But the way in which I framed those are, these are the important things that got me to where I'm at, coming all the way back to the very start of your partner. I forgot her name, but your partner starting on social media, and my advice would be just to be yourself and talk about your own journey. That is what I now do. It's like this. These are the key principles that fundamentally move the needle for me. Learning how to just structure a program. And it's not so much that we're doing 4x8 and 4x9 and it's this progression or whatever. It's not that, because that didn't move the needle for me for programming. What moved the needle for me for program was understand what volume is. And when people actually talk about volume increases and decreases, what are they talking about? Are we talking about sets per week? Are we talking about total reps? Are we talking about tonnage? Are we talking about frequency? Frequency is its own thing. All right, what is frequency? Well, we need to understand what frequency is before we even have a conversation of increasing or decreasing frequency. What is intensity? Is it RPE? Is RPE different to RIR? And understanding that, all right, well, maybe there's a different strategy that needs to... It's all of the things that actually moved my needle as a coach or my needle as a business owner. It's not I read this journal article and it tells me that I need to do 10 sets of biceps if I want to grow it. Oh, everyone does 10 sets of biceps. It's like, no, that's never the way in which a good coach ever functions. It's what are my key principles? What information do I need to gather to make an informed decision? And then making a decision, reviewing what happens in front. Making a decision, reviewing what happens in front. So that process has just been that's literally all my courses are now. It's what's helped me.
Yeah,
sick.
Volume debate is a good example of just how confusing it can fucking get, because there's studies that say you should do less, there's studies that say you should do more. And if you understand kind of why they're saying it and the context behind it and like the individuals involved in it and what volume truly is and stimulus as a whole, things like that, you can make sense of it and understand that it kind of all matters but doesn't matter. But like, you can't start with that. Like, I couldn't go to you as a day one coach and go like, hey, Jamie, all this is fucking bullshit, but you should know it as like kinda as well. And it'd be just like, you'd absolutely be mind blown by it. So it needs to, I feel like we all need to go through this little bit of a journey of kind of understanding things and then understanding the limitations of them. And then that's where those big principles come into play, because like you said, it isn't about the little details. It's about the overall, why does it fucking matter? Like, to me.
No, I agree. 100%.
Like if somebody said how much volume do you lead? I'm like, enough. And then they're like, what is enough? And I'm like, fuck, man, this is a rabbit hole,
That's
bro.
the longer conversation.
Yeah. And it's...
Yeah, and I think a lot of, and again, I like just going back to that period, the evidence-based period, which consumed me as well. Like I fell into it and I was in there and a lot of that stuff, as I said, like it shaped the way that I was building some of the things that I was doing. But even like you could, like a Jeff Nippard, like you go to his YouTube channel and you see these like incredibly detailed reviews of 10 different studies and what they all mean and the limitations of each study and all of this sort of stuff. But always 100% guaranteed, you get to the end and the process, the actual application of all of that information is the most generic thing ever. It's like, how much volume do I need? Well, are you recovering?
Yeah.
Yes. Are you making gains? Yes. Maybe try a little bit more. Like that's all it is. Or it's, are you recovering? No. Are you making gains? No. Maybe try a little bit less. Like that's literally like all of this information that we've gathered, nothing has really changed. Like it's just good training is good training. Like good advice is good advice. Good technique is good technique. Good programming is good programming. Nothing has really, our understanding of frequency is a little bit tighter. All right, higher frequency seems to work better in, but although that's now starting to get challenged. So, like, I don't know,
I think the other thing in our industry that's quite confusing is it like, for good reason, like ideas and messages that people are putting out are rapidly evolving. Like if you look at Mike Israetel, you've brought him up a couple times, PhD, extremely well educated, extremely well spoken as an educator, has a lot of merit to what he's saying. If you look at his stuff from 5 years ago, he was going like, everybody should do all the volume. And then now if you look at his stuff, it's like, everybody should do like, doing too much volume will fuck you up. And so like, you can understand if you were just a PT sitting there going like, well, Mike probably knows what he's talking about, so I'll just trust that guy. Fuck, I mean, he does, but he doesn't as well. You know what I mean? So,
you should trust
him.
Yeah,
but it's so crazy.
And this is where I think, but
the context.
But this is where I think that a lot of, but what layers the context in something that's actually usable is what are your principles as a coach? Like, what is of value to you and your process with your clients? Because then you can, it doesn't matter what you consume or who you consume it from. I can consume a squat you fucking shit post about whatever the fuck, but my principles tell me that when I'm listening to that context,
you put it through your filter,
because I know my foundation of what's important, and I observe him saying there's fire coming out of someone's back when they're doing a rounded deadlift, and I'm observing this thing and I'm saying, well, this goes against all of the things that I hold true or at least most accurate, I can just ignore that. And when I consume a Mike Israetel and he says a slightly contradictory thing to what he said 4 years ago, it doesn't matter what those two messages were, because when I bring them into my context and my principles and my values as a coach, all of a sudden I can say, well, I can see what he's saying there because it aligns with this. And I can kind of see what he's saying here because it aligns with this. And then that's how I actually pragmatically move forward. Like your principles, and that's the biggest thing that I try, especially with my coaching foundations course, is the first homework task is before you consume any of this fucking content, before I influence you with my principles, what are your principles? Write them out. What are your programming principles? What are your movement principles? What are your client management principles? Like, what is the information that you try to gather? What are the key things that formulate your ideas before you consume my thing? And then, because we're all just humans and get influence and start to like, oh, this makes sense. I'm just going to copy this and do all of that sort of stuff. That's fantastic. That's why you purchase education. But at least go through the process of internalizing what it is that's valuable to you.
On that note, then, like, if we're talking, let's go back to day one, PT, etc., fresh to the industry, how would you, and I'm assuming like you obviously cover this in your courses and things like that, but is there like how would you tell someone who's fresh to the industry, who has no fucking idea about how anything realistically works, to establish a principle when they really don't? Like, I remember when I first started, I knew nothing about programming. I knew nothing about really human movement.
Yeah, but I still reckon you'd have
like you probably would have had foundational thought processes.
It might have been
like
hard
that.
training.
Yeah. Train real hard.
It could just be like, that could be and that was my first principle was start with heavy compounds, go to isolations, and destroy my muscles at the end of the sessions. Like that was and you could formulate it in some way, like, all right, heavy compounds, strength focused. All right, there's a little bit of a principle starting to film there is how am I actually structuring my sessions? Like everybody has experience to draw upon, and it might only be 12 months in the gym and like you might be a 17-year-old similar to who I was, 15, 16, getting into the gym, 17, 18, realizing I really like this and I want to get into this. Well, not even so much wanting to get into it, but I was just like fascinated by training and movement. And
I think even at that stage, I was like, you know, one of mine would be like, I got to try and do better than last week, which I mean,
that's a perfect thing. And then all of a sudden it starts to propagate into progression or overload or whatever. And then now you're really starting to understand a core pillar. And then you've got these ideas. And some of them might be really subjective. Just the idea of giving your best effort might be a principle that underpins a lot of the things that you do, both in business. Like if you've ever read The Four Agreements by, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm not even going to try. But those four agreements can be just seen as like four subjective principles to all aspects of life. And this is another key thing when you take a principle-driven attitude to your development, is that these principles are broad sweeping. Like that's the crux of what a principle is. It's a very general, broad idea that has multiple, across many industries, across many fields, application. So a good example of that would be Ray Dalio has a book called Principles, and one of his key principles is which ultimately becomes top-down, bottoms-up in a programming sense, but he has top-down management strategies for global markets on large timescales. And he looks for the trends, and that informs what he does at a day-to-day level with his decision-making from investments or recommendations or advice or whatever he's doing with all of his consultants underneath that. From a bottoms-up level, he takes those global trends that are happening long-term and applies them in a bottoms-up strategy in the real time. And as that top trend, that top-down, those rules and restrictions that have been set on the system is placed, all of a sudden it informs, but it doesn't dictate what he's doing in the real time. He's always going bit of back and forth with whoever he's working with and whatever the specific situation is, how risky that person is, how whatever, like it's, so like individual context matters, but the top-down trend of what's happening in the global markets makes a big influence on the overall direction that he's doing. welcome to coaching as a principle. Top down is I've got a goal that I want to achieve in 16 weeks, time constraint. I have to do squat, bench press, and deadlift because I power lift. We've got movement constraints. We've got day constraints of how many days per week. We've got volume constraints of niggles and all of that sort of stuff, previous injuries, beliefs, and all of that. All those top-down constraints restrict. However, the bottoms up is actually how am I applying this week to week with management, with clients, and what am I doing and how are we navigating that and making changes on the fly and all of that sort of stuff. Like everyone has principles, and they're broad sweeping and they apply everywhere. It's just, are you aware? Have you actually gone back and thought, what do I actually think, believe? And it's a really easy thing to do. Is just who has informed your understanding would be the first question. Who are the key influences of who I am at this point? And this is for a new coach. Was it your first coach? Was it your parents? Was it Instagram people? Was it YouTube? Was it social media? Was it whatever it might be? Who are these people? What are their principles? Get those principles out of the way first. All right, these things are definitely in my sort of understanding. Second thing, what do I believe about programming, coaching, movement, technique, or whatever? What are my beliefs? And then try to marry them together in some way and have them as set sort of things. That's what I would recommend to anyone. And even if you've only been going for 12 months, it's in there. You've got key things that you'll probably hold true for the next 20 years. Like it's in there. You just become more aware and better and understand those principles.
Yeah, become much deeper. Like the progression thing that you talked about. Like my understanding of progression back then was just like, hey, I'm going to try and do better than last week, add weight to the bar. Whereas now it's like very different. Like I'm in a much different training age. I got way more shit going on in life, and my idea of progression and how I apply it to clients way deeper. But it's still there.
And it will always be there. And it's probably the same with all of your areas in life. Your idea of progression has evolved, but it's still a core pillar of what you think with business or your relationship or your life or personal goals and all of that. Like it's probably a key thing that underpins a lot of what you believe. And that's where like a new coach is no different. They've got these key things that underpin. And the most successful coaches, I think, and true coaches, not like these fucking booty influencers that pop off and get 1 million followers and all of this sort of stuff. But like true coaches, and we all know the ones that we respect in the industry, if you were to sit down with them and say, what are your key principles? Within 20 seconds, they got 5 or 6 things listed down, and they could do a 2-hour lecture on any one of those things. Like they know exactly what they're talking about. A good book to start would be Scientific Principles of Strength Training. Like Chad Wesley Smith, just unpacking these are the things that are important. Everything else doesn't fucking matter. Or it fits in here somewhere, which it generally does. It all just fits into these core things.
Tell us about your well, we're lucky enough to host yourself in this exact gym, Nexus Performance Gold Coast, soon. So you'll be making your way up here and hopefully having a good group of people that you're going to help understand some of this stuff that you just talked us through. Sure, talk us through what your goal is, like your outcome that you're looking to get into with that. Like what are the people going to walk out with in, just a bit of a rundown on it.
Absolutely. So the course or the seminar is called Understanding Movement, and that is the key outcome that I want people to have by the end of it, which is just to understand what everyone's actually talking about when they discuss these topics, when they discuss all of these very detailed, intricate sort of, whether it be the foot, whether it be the pelvis, the rib cage, the scapula, whether it be technique, any of these sort of things. And we can get in the weeds, and we do get in the weeds, but the goal is to then zoom out and understand how to actually apply that stuff with your coaching. So it's 4 main sections. We unpack the anatomy first of the human body, focusing on the 3 main areas, being the foot, the pelvis, and the rib cage. Once we have that foundation set, we layer on the principles of human movement, which is gait cycle. Because I know a lot of people, they observe some of these people in the industry, like a David Gray or a Connor Harris or whatever, talking about like gait cycle and Angus Bradley talks about it a lot, but like gait cycle being like a lens and all of that. So we unpack gait cycle as a lens, as a main principle of human movement alongside breathing. And then with those two sort of more global function of human sort of understandings, we can then layer that into, all right, what does this actually mean for gym performance outcomes and all of that? And that's where my main principle of human movement comes in, which is we're just managing center of mass. Like it's like a little hidden thing that all of these, it's like a peek behind the curtains, and everybody's queuing, everybody's mobility strategies and tricks and tweaks, and everybody's performance improvements, and everybody's stability issues in lifting, and all of this sort of stuff is like, when you actually understand this whole picture, it's just the human trying to manage center of mass, and tension has been shifted to a lower back, or shifted to a calf, or shifted to the upper back or your neck in an attempt to better manage your mass against gravity moving forward. And if we can understand this principle of how we're managing our mass, all of a sudden everything just starts to pop off, and you're like, holy shit, this person can now squat deep, even though for 12 months we've stretched their hip flexors and tried to roll their fucking Achilles with a soft
roll
tissue.
The foot out.
All of a sudden they're squatting deeper. We've just managed the center of mass. This person can't get their arms overhead. All of a sudden we've taught them how to shift their center of mass back and actually allow the scapular places to move up and around on. This person can't access internal rotation. All of a sudden we learn how to manage the mass and access internal rotation. Take tension off the shoulder, improve performance. This person's feeling lower back in squats. What do we do? How do we brace better? Center of mass management. How do we do? A lot of it just starts to come back, and that's one of my key principles of human movement, and that's the crux of what I want to get through.
Yeah, well, we run SBD workshops and general hypertrophy workshops and here for our members all the time, and often I find ourselves kind of like referencing this sort of stuff and using these terminologies, but then I kind of back off it, and we're like, well, not today, guys. This is something that really doesn't deserve me giving a 2-minute fucking talk on and then moving on. Like, it needs more than that. So for anybody who's come to our workshops and heard us reference things like center of mass, or try to get their head around what we're talking about when we're talking about gait and how it relates, or the foot and squats, and how all those things, even though they seem completely different, are not completely different. This is what you want to come to wrap your head around it, and then I can guarantee when you come to something more just zoomed in like our SBD workshops, you'll get so much more out of it, because you'll be able to take these big principles and then go like, here's the things, and I can understand these cues a lot better. I can get more out of like what people are saying, out of my feedback from my coach, out of my own videos when I watch them back, and give my kind of self-critique. So there's like understanding this at this level, all those things that you just talked about, I guarantee will make everybody better in some way, whether in athletes or a coach. And so, yeah, big endorsement here. Get around it.
Yeah, I'm fucking keen.
Yeah, like it goes both ways. Like, we get very specific and detailed in understanding. So like even just the foot and how the foot functions and rolls, and what is pronation, what is supination, what are the arches telling us, pressure shifting and all of that sort of stuff. But then ultimately, like, the end goal is to then, all right, I understand that really detailed, but zooming out, what does it actually mean for lifting? It means we need to find some midfoot. Just find something that's really easy to reference. They've just got a feeling of it, and that becomes the cue. That becomes the thing that we're using. And even though we could go really detailed in why that's really, really important if we wanted to, it's just like, no, what actually matters is this application and actually getting clients or yourself to better express what we're looking for. Because in all of, and it comes back to like that Jeff Nippard sort of discussion, you can get super, super, super detailed, but the practical application becomes just a very generalized thing, which in that case would be midfoot pressure. Like, that's just very general, but it has very particular reasons as to why it is so important, and why it's probably worth building some awareness around and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm keen for it. And thank you for letting me run it at the gym. I think it'll be great. We've already sold a couple of tickets up there at Queensland, which we love.
We'll be pushing it more. And anybody who listens to this, I know there's a lot of people in the gym that listen to this.
Yeah, there is.
So they tell me every time they'll come up and they'll like go,
They'll give
"Hey,
us
you talked about this," and then I'm
Oh.
like, "Fuck, did I say that?" Oh.
Well, Paddy the other day, the podcast cuts out halfway. Oh, thanks, mate, because I was not listening to it to find out.
So, yeah, if you are a gym member, here's your kick in the ass.
I will just say one more thing, because I always get the question, like, is this only for coaches? And absolutely it's for coaches, allied health and all of that. Like, if you're interested in just general movement and some of the stuff that I've produced in the past, like, absolutely no brainer. But it is also great for lifters. But I would say that there are certain lifters, and they know who they are. They're like these inquisitive lifters. They actually they're keen on, like, actually, why are we doing it this way? Or they have like a bit more of a thirst for understanding what is going on. Those sort of people would get a shit ton.
Well, they're the good lifters.
Out of this. Yeah.
They're my lifters.
Well, sometimes no, you just need someone who's almost ignorant to what's going on, and they just, I
feel like being able to
down,
switch in that, you know.
But
you got to have a switch and brain, turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the skill. Yeah, that's the skill. So yeah, if you are an inquisitive lifter, I would also recommend it. And I have a discount code, just like an early bird. It's up for another couple of weeks, but Little Pia, LITTLEPIA.
We'll be sure to list it all out. We'll give people the link. We'll give people the code. We'll give people the details, and they can mark it on their calendar. And we'll be keen for some good old education in the gym.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a minute since I've gone to any workshop, seminar, anything. Yeah, that hasn't been our own.
Josh is going to be listing out questions for you.
Yeah, don't you worry. I'll be that annoying senior student at the back.
I love the discussions. No, they're the best, because they end up in areas that actually matter more often than not. A group that actually like helps direct, and I say this at the start of every one of my presentations, and this is part of the reason why I much prefer in person than online, because online very quickly just becomes a lecture. You can't see people. They want to interrupt with it, like all of that sort of stuff. At least with like in person, it's so much more free to actually have those sort of like winding conversations of application and doubling back and maybe explaining something a little bit differently so that we can actually apply it and do all of that sort of stuff. Like, so yeah, I'm all for questions and tangents and rants. And
we love a good tangent.
It's the best part of it. It is the best part.
We love a good tangent here, so it's perfect.
You won't hear tangents on this podcast. Absolutely strict to our guides for sure.
Never.
All right, cool. We'll leave it there. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.
Perfecto.
Lovely. Thank you very much for having me, boys.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.